Okay, so let's dive right in. Today we're going to trace the absolutely fascinating journey of yoga, how it went from this ancient, pretty esoteric Indian spiritual tradition to a global, multi-billion-dollar wellness industry. I mean, you've seen it everywhere, right? There's a studio on pretty much every corner, countless apps on your phone, yoga mats tucked under everyone's arm. It's a huge part of our modern culture now, no question.
But how did that actually happen? How did a practice that's rooted in thousands of years of Eastern philosophy become such a cornerstone of Western life? Well, that's the big question, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack in this explainer.
So the story doesn't start where you might think. Not with yoga pants and fancy postures. Nope. It starts much, much earlier and a lot more quietly. It begins with yoga arriving in the West purely as an idea, as a philosophy. The very first seeds were planted in some pretty surprising places. Way back in the mid-1800s, you had these transcendentalist thinkers, guys like Emerson and Thoreau, and they were reading the first ever English translations of scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita. Then, a little later in 1875, the Theosophical Society gets founded, and it becomes this major pipeline for Eastern thought. But the real lightning strike? That was 1893. Swami Vivekananda just completely electrifies the audience at the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago. He was an instant sensation.
And here's the thing that's so crucial to remember. For these early adopters, yoga wasn't a physical practice at all, not even close. It was something you read about, something you discussed and debated in intellectual circles. It was all about the mind, not yet about the body.
But of course, that was all about to change. This next phase, this is the great shift. The moment yoga goes from being just an idea you talk about to something you actually do. And wow, what a shift it was. We go from the 1800s, where yoga meant reading translations, having these intellectual discussions, and joining philosophical societies, to the early 1900s, where it starts to mean something totally different. Breathing techniques, physical postures, meditation, and of course, gurus to teach it all. So how did people even learn these new practices? Well, it started with the first guidebooks. In the early 1900s, a series of books published under the pen name Yogi Ramacharaka gave Westerners their first real how-to on breathing exercises, or pranayama. Then, in 1919, Sir John Woodrop's book, The Serpent Power, was a total game-changer. It just blew the doors open on the methods of Tantra and Kundalini for an English-speaking audience. Suddenly, the veil of secrecy was starting to lift.
Books are one thing, but for a practice like yoga to really take root, it needed living masters. It needed teachers who would actually travel to the West and build a foundation, one disciple at a time.
And in this period, there are three figures who are just absolutely pivotal. First, you have the sensation, Swami Vivekananda, whose 1893 tour really laid all that philosophical groundwork. Then came the resident master, Paramahansa Yogananda. He arrived in 1920 and taught Kriya Yoga for over 30 years, building a permanent base. And finally, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi shows up in 1958 and turns transcendental meditation into a global movement, famously getting celebrities like the Beatles on board.
And the cultural impact of these masters was just immense. I mean, Yogananda's spiritual memoir in particular became a phenomenon. It opened the door for millions of Westerners, showing them these profound possibilities that lay within the path of yoga. It's still inspiring people today.
So thanks to the hard work of all these pioneers, the stage was officially set. After the 1960s, what was once this niche, kind of weird interest just exploded. It became a full-blown mainstream cultural boom.
Just how big was this boom? Okay, get this. There's one curated list of English-language yoga books, the Advanced Yoga Practices book list, and it has over 500 titles on it. And that's not even everything ever written. That's just one collection. It shows this absolute explosion of knowledge. Teachings that had been kept secret for centuries were suddenly available to anyone who could walk into a bookstore. And this wasn't just one kind of yoga either. It was like a supermarket of spirituality suddenly opened up. You had BKS Iyengar's Light on Yoga, which basically became the Bible for Hatha yoga postures. You had incredibly detailed books on advanced Tantra and Kriya from Swami Satyananda. The non-dual teachings of Ramana Maharshi became hugely influential. Gopi Krishna's dramatic stories about his Kundalini awakening totally captivated readers. And then you had Osho, who introduced tantric principles to a whole generation. Suddenly, there was a path for just about everyone.
So after all this history, where does that leave us today? Well, from its very first philosophical beginnings, all the way to this mainstream boom, this entire journey has really been heading in one single direction: inward.
Today, that explosion of knowledge is still happening, but the medium has changed. The internet is the new frontier. You've got modern teachers reaching literally millions of people all around the world digitally, continuing this expansion that started over 150 years ago.
So with all these books and videos and teachers, what's the point of all this study? Well, in yoga, there's a perfect term for it, swajaya. Now, on the surface, it means spiritual study, but its true, deeper meaning is the study of the self.
And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway. The whole point of all these external teachings, the books, the gurus, the classes, it isn't just to pile up information. It's all designed to point you inward until you don't even need the external map anymore because you've become the territory. You become the book.
Which leaves us with this final, really powerful thought. After this long, incredible journey, from east to west, from philosophy to practice, the final destination isn't some place or some person. It's the realization that the ultimate teacher you've been searching for has been right there, inside you this whole time.